Good morning. I'm Major General V.K. Sharma, the Director General of USI, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome our esteemed panelists, Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, Shri Tilak Devashar, then we have General Hudda, General Yadav, my colleague from USI, and then we have Arvind Saharan, who is joining us from New Zealand. While all our panelists who are based in India are very well known, they are accomplished top policy makers and also authors and opinion makers. And at the same time, even Arvind Saharan is one of the most popular YouTuber who is widely watched in Pakistan and has done a number of stories, and he was on a recent visit to Pakistan. So we are fortunate to have his perspective from a ground zero point of view. The theme that we have picked up for today's discussion is Pakistan, a theocratic state, vis-a-vis India, a civilizational state. What shapes their respective identities and strategic behavior? There is much discussed about Pahalgam attack and the follow-up from that. So we will not delve much into that, but we will basically get into certain foundational issues, and that is the statement which Pak Army Chief Asif Munir had made, and he has, not only he but even the previous Army Chiefs from time to time, they have to a varying degree sort of portrayed Pakistan's ideological foundations and its military strategy on two-nation theory. Asif Munir is actually a Hafiz-e-Quran, that means he has memorized whole Quran by heart, and he also comes from a orthodox family background. If you look at Pakistan Army's motto, that is Iman, Taqwa or Jihad Fi Sabilillah, that means faith, piety and jihad in Allah's path, and that is also inscribed in the military insignia or the army insignia of Pakistan Army. Now, Munir is on record to say that under the Pakistani constitution, the authority to rule the country is that of Allah. Therefore, reinforcing the idea that the army's actions are divinely sanctioned. On 16th of April 2025, he stated that Hindus and Muslims are two different people and two different aspects of life, and therefore this uniqueness of Pakistan as a theocratic state based on two-nation theory must be passed on to the future generations. Following the Pahalgam attack, again he has reiterated two-nation theory during a passing out parade at the Pakistan Military Academy on 26th of April 2025. In the same breath, Munir has also been calling Kashmir as Pakistan jugular vein, thus linking the two-nation theory, suggesting that Kashmir issue embodies the ideological divide between Hindus and Muslims, and therefore Pakistan Army de facto is the custodian of ideological frontiers, which includes Kashmir of Pakistan. Similar thoughts were echoed by Ziaul Haq, who is a mastermind in Islamization of Pakistan Army and also amending the constitution and calling a posse of the jihadi actors as mujahideen. And he also was a proponent of this two-nation theory, portraying India as a Hindu adversary. He frequently invoked two-nation theory to justify Pakistan's stance on Kashmir, that Hindus and Muslims cannot coexist, and he called Islamabad of Pakistan as what you call is the fortress of Islam. Even so much so that the nuclear bomb has been designated by them as an Islamic bomb. So, in contrast to this kind of a theocratic mindset, India, on the other hand, is a proud civilizational state, and our thought process is shaped by a very rich heritage, pluralistic culture, and the doctrine of unity in diversity. At the moment, whatever is happening, well, it is important to put it in a deeper foundational perspective, and that is basically the civilizational divide between the two countries, because this is the fountainhead of all the actions, whether in words or in deeds, that emanate from Pakistan. So, to put in perspective, I have a very eminent panel here, and the first question that we would begin with Ambassador Bisaria, and my question is, how does Pakistan's theocratic identity shape its national character and strategic choices? Over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you. I think this is an important issue to discuss and debate because I have argued, for instance, in my book that for the last 77 years, Pakistan and India's trajectories have been dramatically different. And they've been different from the foundational moment because of the early confusion of identity. So if we were to trace one factor that has caused this continuous conflict and all the problems that Pakistan creates for India and for itself, it is Pakistan's foundational identity crisis. And that is partly because Pakistan's founders created a political plan from 1940 to 47 of creating this, what later became a theocratic state, but did not leave behind a vision of what kind of state they wanted it to be. So in 1947, they also suffered from losing their early leaders very early, in the sense that Jinnah passed away in 1948. Liaquat Ali Khan, the prime minister, was assassinated in 1951. And there was a takeover of Pakistan by the sort of feudal or army elites who tried to define that vision but lacked the imagination of defining that vision. And Pakistan ended up becoming a theocratic garrison state, and I would say a theocratic paranoid garrison state, because it was defining its identity as the other of India, as the country that was worried about being taken over by India, and therefore it was trying to define even its cultural identity as closer to the Gulf Arabs than to South Asians. So I think that multiple confusions and the fact that it failed to give itself a modern post-colonial constitutional identity, which India did. India was independent in 47. India had given itself a constitution by 1950. India had the continuity, the political continuity in the early years to debate the kind of country it would be, the kind of identity it would have. But Pakistan staggered along. In 1956, they tried to give themselves a constitution, failed. That constitution failed in 2 years because Ayub Khan's dictatorship took over. So I think the history is been that of a country that failed to define itself and failed to reform, and the trajectories were dramatically different. And I think what we saw, and you alluded to the Asim Munir's statement, a very regressive statement in April this year, which says that not much has changed. The mindset and hasn't changed. The political imagination of the ruling elite, the army, has not evolved, and it is still harking back to a cross between Jinnah and Ziaul Haq in the 80s, which was essentially trying to, as you said, ordain the divine right of the army to rule Pakistan. In the 90s. In the 1980s, we had this trope about Allah, Army, and America, which were defining the vision of Pakistan. And essentially, they came up with what was a Mullah military alliance, the MMA it was called in those days, which was trying to usurp this right. So I think that initial confusion has led to an identity crisis which continues to the day and defines not just Pakistan's failure or dysfunction as a state, but also its continuing hostility towards India.
Thank you very much for that very so insightful observation. And I would request Arvind to please comment on what Ambassador has said and your own observations based on your recent visit to Pakistan. Over to you.
Thank you, General Sharma. I hope I'm audible. I would agree with the Ambassador Bisaria, but there is a slight disagreement in terms of how he mentioned that some of its leaders passed away quite early after the country was created. So the confusion that Pakistan is suffering from the last 78 years can be traced back to its founding father Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So if many would say that he never wanted Pakistan to be a theocratic state. Some would also refer to his 11th of August speech, where he clearly said that the business of the state would have nothing to do with the religion. However, if you see his latest speech when he addressed a gathering at Karachi Bar Council in January 1948, he was asked what would be the constitution of Pakistan, to which Muhammad Ali Jinnah replied that our constitution was written 1300 years ago. So he never gave clear guidelines on the country's constitution, which is why religion continues to play a major role in how the country sees itself. Many religious leaders and state institutions tell people that the reason Pakistan faces problems is because it hasn't fully followed Islamic teachings. It is made to believe in Pakistan that the only solution to all of Pakistan's problem is Islam. So because of this, Islam actually influences many areas of life, including education, politics, and law. Let me give you an example that I often get asked when I'm in Pakistan. People would come up to me and say that, oh, but India is a secular country. And I'm like, yes, we are secular. But the moment you cross the Atari-Wagah border, secularism is considered to be a dirty word. I, have never seen such a huge contradiction anywhere else in the world. Most of the Pakistanis believe that secularism is good where Muslims are in the minority. However, in a Muslim majority state, they don't want secularism, and quite similar is the case with the overseas Pakistanis. They would want to enjoy all the luxuries and the equalities of the modern world when they're living in the Western societies. But when asked on how would they like to see Pakistan, their response would be, oh, Pakistan should be Islamic. Similarly, there are huge contradictions in terms of how they want India to be governed. For example, a Pakistani would say, oh, we would want India to be a secular country. However, towards their west, they want Afghanistan to be ruled by a Sharia government. For themselves, they have this brilliant notion of Islamic democracy, to which some would say that's hypocrisy. So one of the political commentators in Pakistan recently told me that, हमसे बहुत बड़ी गलती हुई कि हमने तालिबान को सपोर्ट किया. अब तालिबान जिस किस्म का निज़ाम अफगानिस्तान में चला रहे हैं, वो तो बड़ा ही खौफनाक है. तो मैंने उसके जवाब में कहा, Taliban doesn't have those contradictions within themselves. What is good for the goose is also good for the gander. वो अपने लिए जो अच्छा समझते हैं, वो आपके लिए भी वही समझते हैं. So, which is why we see, TTP causing all sorts of problems for Pakistan. So, Pakistan continues to remain in a conflict where they really don't know what to do. The government would often link being a good citizen with being a good Muslim. This creates a national identity where religion and patriotism are often closely tied together. However, this approach often leaves the religious minorities, they don't fit within the idea of Pakistan, and it makes it harder for them and their viewpoints to be accepted. We have laws like blasphemy law in Pakistan, that is deeply, built into the Pakistani, Sharia legal system. And these laws have often led to violence and unfair treatment from the for the people of the minority groups. The Pakistani army that Ambassador Basari also talked about, they also use religion to support its power and justify its role in conflicts. We saw that in Kashmir and in Afghanistan. Pakistan, for example, in its support for the, they would only talk about the Muslims in Kashmir. They're ignoring the other diverse groups within the Kashmir, the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. In Afghanistan, Pakistan has supported Islamic groups like the Taliban for their own motives and the strategic depth. So, all in all, I would say Pakistan is a highly contradictory state. On a world stage, it tries to show itself as the leader of the Muslim world. While this helps, I'm not saying that this doesn't help them for the to project themselves basically, that yes, we are friends with the Muslim Ummah and we are the ones who are actually basically driving. We are in the driving seat when it comes to the Muslim countries. However, this can sometimes cause problems, especially in dealing with the Western countries that focus on secular values. I'm sure you all remember what had happened a few years ago when the members of the Tehreek-e-Labbaik came to Islamabad for a march to expel the French ambassador. So Pakistan continues to live in this sort of problem where they really don't know what the direction of the country should be, whether it should be a religious state or a secular state. The whole notion of being an Islamic republic, all in all, in itself is a huge contradiction. So I'll just end here for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind, for that perspective. And now that takes us forward to the next question, and that's about India. What defines India as a civilizational state, and how does this guide its strategic outlook? May I request General Yadav to please have his views?
Thank you, sir. I think India for the world, but Bharat, as we would like to be known, has got a very rich civilization, which is almost about 5,000 years old. And it has gone through the Vedic period, it has gone through the Indus Valley civilization period, it has gone through the Mauryan age, the Gupta's age, and the recent historical times. There are some fundamental elements which we need to know about Bharat, that has always believed on philosophical inquiry. It has always given reverence to nature. It has given value to family structure and ethos. It has always devoted thought to society, pluralism, and dharma. So basically, because of these underlying human principles, we have survived through various invasions and colonialism, etc. And if I may say that Bharat, as different from others, is a culturally unified region, and we live together in unity in diversity. It is totally different than what the nation state definition says later, because a nation state is largely defined or identified with ethnicity, language, religion, the sense of sovereignty, and territory. So our thought process is slightly different. Now, coming to the second part is the strategic thought aspect. Now, strategic thought will always get guided by the internal and external threats. In sum total, if we see over the years and over the centuries, that it is characterized by endurance, patience, ethical restraint, preference to defensive strategy rather than an offensive strategy, and the concept of dharma. However, we should not miss out that India has always been progressing from times immemorial. when Ram in the Treta Yuga metamorphosed into Krishna in the Dwapar Yuga. There was a distinct change. Similarly, when Kautilya wrote Arthashastra, I think he brought in all modern elements of statecraft, which even included the concept of spies, alliances, deception, etc. However, we possibly forgot all those things in between. While there were very many people who were on to the forward-looking thing like the Marathas, the independence movement, the various Krantikaris, but somehow India is seen through two inflection points. One was Ashok. The aspect of pacifism set in from there, and from Gandhi, it was the concept of non-violence. These two aspects came to the fore, and the others got subsequently subsumed. I do not know how and why. Post-independence, because of the country's status at that particular time, defense was possibly subordinated to the developmental needs of the nation. In between, we shifted to realism when, during 1971, during our nuclear tests in 1998. However, there was again a lag, and now lately we are once again coming up with a new assertiveness, which is very much visible by our recent actions in Uri, Balakot, and how we respond to the current attack which has taken place. But one thing is to be seen, that in strategic thought, the muscle power always continues to play a very important part. So whether you take America or whether you take an emerging China, until unless we have the muscle power behind us, the thought will always be half hollow. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan Yadav, for that perspective. We'll probably revisit some of these issues in an open discussion. And that takes me to the third question, and that is to General Hooda. Why does Pakistan's military cling to partition era narrative like two-nation theory in 2025? And how does it shape its military strategy against India? Over to you, General Hooda.
Thank you, Jan Sharma. Look, the two-nation theory and why Pakistan continues to cling to it, because they feel it's a foundational pillar of its national identity. Without the two-nation theory, Pakistan's very creation begins to unravel. I mean, why was it created? And they say it was created as a separate homeland for Muslims. And that is something they continue to believe. And I think the reason why they also continue to stress on the two-nation theory is because clinging to this, keeps Kashmir central to the national discourse. That here is a Muslim majority state in India, and because Muslims need a separate homeland, so Kashmir is central and key, and words used like it is Pakistan's jugular vein. And in all this, as you also mentioned, Jan Sharma, that Pakistan Army particularly sees itself as the defenders of Pakistan's ideology, and so this is where the army takes center stage, and everything Indian is framed as Hindus. So if you look at Ayub Khan's directive for 1965 war, one line in that states, the Hindu morale would not stand more than a couple of hard blows, and so we will succeed in this 1965 war. Now, obviously, they've had setbacks in the conflicts and wars that they've fought with India, particularly 1971, and I think as the gap between the two countries has grown and widened, and that gap includes obviously the conventional military strength, Pakistan therefore turns to you can call asymmetric warfare, proxy warfare, use of terrorists to sort of bleed India. And where does this recruitment in terror organization come from? Mainly comes from madrasas, seminaries. What is the theme with which these terrorists are sent into India? The theme is that Muslims in Kashmir are in danger, their identity is in danger, and therefore you have to fight for them. That's the theme with which these people come across. So these terrorists are religiously motivated forces, and they are very deeply rooted in the ideological structure of the state. So we can't sort of distinguish, say, between the state and these jihadi forces, and because the military has used these to such an extent, the whole military jihad complex has been institutionalized. So when we look at Pakistan's use of Pakistan military's use of terrorism, it's not a shadow strategy. It's not a strategy that accompanies anything else. It becomes their main strategy. And so this presents a challenge, Judge Sharma. You know, when we say why is it that Pakistan is not able to dismantle its terror complex, it's because, as I said, this complex has been so institutionalized that the ideological cost of dismantling the structure is too high. And I think this is something also that we need to keep in mind. This fundamental factors when we sort of think that Pakistan should stop using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. The way they have been nurtured, just the cost of dismantling this is going to be too high. So I'll stop my comments here, and then if there is anything further, we can take it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan Huda. We now get on to the next question, and that is to Shri Davasha. And that is, how does these ideological identities impact internal stability and Pakistan's global credibility, particularly from the point of view of Tehreek-e-Taliban of Pakistan, the Baloch resistance movement, which is gaining momentum, and a very, very troubled and tenuous relationship with their own protege, and that is Taliban. Your comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The short answer to the question is that the ideological identities have adversely affected Pakistan's internal stability. And the reason for this is that, as all of you have mentioned, the foundational basis of Pakistan has been religion, has been Islam. Now, this in itself was a fairly, let me say, not incorrect, but was a false pretense to create a country. In fact, Maulana Azad had pointed this out in an interview. And he said that nowhere in the Quran or in Islam does it say that only Muslims or only Islam will be the basis of a country. He said in the subcontinent, the loyalty of the Muslims is to the various sects, not to an overarching thing called Islam. You can unite them in their hatred for or their animosity towards the Hindus, but you can't keep them together. And this is precisely what has happened. In 1971, East Pakistan broke away to become Bangladesh because for them it was not Islam that was the most salient part of their identity, but it was language. Similarly, what you see is happening in Balochistan. Again, it's not, they are Muslims, they are conservative Muslims, but it is not Islam that is the salient aspect of their identity. It is their language, it is their culture, it is their history. Similarly with the Pashtuns. So the foundational basis of Islam itself, what we've talked about, was not the right basis for the creation of a country and to sustain that country. So it certainly impacts internal stability. Second, probably one of the best documents to come out of Pakistan was the Munir Commission report, which was set up after the Ahmadiyya riots in Lahore. And Munir mentions very clearly, they had called about 14 or 15 scholars of different religions, of different sects, and asked them that if you want Ahmadis to be declared non-Muslim, you must first of all know who is a Muslim. And they write that much to our regret, none of the alims could agree on the definition of who is a Muslim. And if we accept the definition of one, we will go out of the pale of Islam as far as the other 13 are concerned. So when people could not even decide who is a Muslim, can you imagine setting up a country on the basis of Islam? So internal stability has been the first casualty of the manner in which Pakistan has been set up. And you can see the consequences of that very much today. I'll just mention about global credibility in a minute. You see, the fact that Pakistan was a willing participant in first the anti-Soviet jihad and then in the war of terror, it got a global reputation of being the epicenter of terrorism. And this in turn stemmed from the fact that it believed that it was the ultimate bastion of Islam and it will be the last bastion standing to the protection of Islam. So I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you, Shri Dwasha. Now, my next question is that can Pakistan transform beyond theocracy into a normal state? They haven't learned lessons, obviously, having been through so many shocks and so many reverses. But when is that inflection point going to arrive when they start behaving like a modern civilized state? So I would request, firstly, Arvind to comment on that and then request you again to comment.
Thank you, General Sharma. Most of the people in India and elsewhere in the world believe that as long as Pakistan's dominant narrative is actually in the hands of the religious clergy, Pakistan can never transform into a normal state. However, I feel that it is not just the clergy, but also its educated elite that should be held responsible for not allowing this country to transform. So I'll quote an example here. I met a minister from People's Party way back in 2018 during my visit to Karachi. We met over a brunch. And the very same day, the assembly election results for Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh had also been announced. So this minister, who is also considered as an intellectual, has written numerous books. I just want you to focus on the psyche of the educated elite here. So he comes onto the table and says that Arvind, today is a wonderful day. BJP has lost the election in the 3 key states of India. How do you feel about it? I said, more important is how you feel about it. You seem to be very happy about it. And he said, oh, yes, I am very happy about it. And I said, what's the reason behind this happiness that, what has BJP got to do with you in Pakistan? So he said that, we would prefer India to be ruled by a secular party. So I said, okay, that's very interesting. About whom are you particularly worried if BJP comes into power? And he said, I'm worried about all the minorities of India. So I said, it would be great if you could perhaps be a little bit honest. Are you particularly worried about the Muslims if BJP comes into power? And his response was very candid. He said, yes, I am worried about the Muslims. So I said, equally, I'm also worried about the minorities of Pakistan. Wouldn't it be great if Pakistan too were to be ruled by a secular government? To which he immediately responded, no, we are an Islamic nation. I said, how convenient, sir, that, you've not even taken a second to remind me that you are an Islamic nation. Well, guess what? The notion of secularism, if the idea itself, if it is good, how come it is good in India and bad in Pakistan? Isn't this supposed to be a universal idea? If it is good, then it should be accepted anywhere else in the world. So the point I'm trying to make here is that it is the educated elite of Pakistan that is responsible for holding the country's transformation. Having said that, yes, Pakistan can move beyond a theocracy and it can become a more inclusive and democratic country, but it faces serious challenges. I think that as long as Islam is deeply tied into politics, law, and national identity, and blasphemy laws and constitutional definition of who is a Muslim are just a few examples. The army has often used the religion to justify its power and also its support, in its goals like Kashmir and Afghanistan. On top of that, weak democratic institutions and lack of the political stability in the country make the reforms really difficult. Education also plays a role. As you know, there are many institutions within the country who actually go on to promote narrow views, and they leave very little room for diversity or debate. That said, there are reasons to be hopeful. Pakistan has a very large young population living in cities, and they are connected to the modern world through internet. And many young people have actually started to question the old ways, and they want Pakistan to be a more modern, fair society. I've met such people time and again in Pakistan, and also through my interactions on social media. Economic pressure, I believe, is also going to be a big factor to grow and attract investment. Pakistanis need some sort of stability and good governance. So, this often pushes leaders towards having more balanced and practical policies. Finally, I would say that even under pressure, Pakistan's civil society, their journalists, activists, they continue to push for minority rights, free speech, and democratic reforms. They have also been some sort of moments in the politics of Pakistan and the courts that have shown that change is possible. In the end, I would say that Pakistan's transformation won't happen overnight, but with time, some sort of good leadership, strong public demand, it can become a more open and democratic state. Thank you.
Thank you. Like to add?
Yeah. So, I feel that it's very difficult for Pakistan to stop being a theocratic state. To do that, they will have to go back to the drawing board and recognize that the foundational principles of the creation of Pakistan itself was incorrect. If they wanted a separate state, they could have created a state as a homeland for the Muslims of the subcontinent. The very fact that they brought in Islam and the two nation theory and gave the foundational basis as Islamic means that today they cannot get out of it. A Pakistani professor made a lovely comment. He said, if the Turks, the Saudis, and the Iranians give up Islam, the Turks remain Turks, the Saudis will remain Saudis, and the Iranians will remain Iranians. What will we remain if we give up Islam? And somebody else gave a reply later on. He said, if we give up Islam, we'll be second-rate Indians. So, Pakistan is caught in the very basis of its creation of being Islam, that they cannot be anything but a theocratic state. That's why in the Objectives Resolution, which was introduced in the part of every constitution, it is allowing the people or making sure that the people are able to govern their lives on the basis of Islam. Now, if Islam was a unified force, they would still have created unity. But the fact that it is divided into sects, and where every sect is trying to run down the other sect, the Barelvis think that the Deobandis are kafir, the Deobandis think the Ahle Hadith is kafir, everybody thinks that the Shias are kafir. So how do you govern and get stability to this kind of a system? So I think it will be very difficult for Pakistan to get rid of or stop being a theocratic state. Thank you.
General, if I may just jump in, I think this is a very interesting debate and very interesting points that both Arvind and Tilak have made. I would agree with Tilak that Pakistan will not cease to be Islamic in the near future or define its identity in religious terms. But from India's point of view, what normal would mean is a state that does not use terror as an instrument, a state where perhaps the civilians have a greater role than the army, a state which isn't obsessed with a sort of Kashmir cause. And we have seen perhaps last year with the kind of vote which the army tried to bottle up and an election that it rigged and redefined, was that the people seem to be quite unhappy about this arrangement, and they want a more normal state. They felt that Imran Khan could provide them that normal state. And in Pakistan's history, I would argue a couple of times, it's happened with strong leadership because they haven't had strong civilian leadership. with strong military leadership. I would think that even General Bajwa, the previous army chief, in the latter part of his tenure, was talking about geoeconomics. And that was essentially trying to say, I want to move towards a more normal situation. Now that's suddenly gone out of the window. The later Musharraf was also trying to become a more progressive state by redefining some of its assumptions. But each time, the old normal comes back to be the new normal. And what Pakistan I think needs is a fine leader to be able to step out of the old, in being imprisoned by the old and into a new sort of normal situation.
Thank you,
Can I also
Ambassador.
add another point here, General Sharma?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have spoken to a lot of Pakistanis, and during my recent visit, there was an interesting observation made by one of the country's leading journalists who also happened to be a staunch supporter of the Taliban. So he said that despite the state's pressure to teach Arabic in schools and make us more and more Islamic as the time passed, Pakistani civil society, especially the ones living in Punjab and in Sindh, they continue to be culturally Hindus. Yes, they have accepted Islam, but apart from them being Muslims, in terms of their daily lives and their practices, the way they go about their weddings, their eating habits, their clothing style, their history, and all the peer fakirs as they call it, most of them happen to be same as the Hindus, and which is why he said that culturally we are still Hindus. So that is where I see a lot of a ray of hope. And with the Kartarpur Sahib corridor, I feel that Indian Punjab offers a ray of hope in these dark times. So maybe that's an area that needs to be looked at. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Arvind. We have seen in the past that whenever there has been a crisis, particularly which involves Indian military, the whole nation has been united. People have spoken in one voice, cutting across the political spectrum and even the ethnic spectrum. Yet, it is a known fact that India, because being a kind of multi-ethnic society, there are issues of societal cohesiveness which we need to address, which Pakistan has attempted from time to time to tinker with as part of its social re-engineering, strategy. Likewise, in the parliament and all, I think an endeavor should be made to have at least so acceptance of our core national security interests. So, in this regard, what we need to do? What are those major pointers that you would like to flag, Jan Yadav?
Thank you, sir. I think India has been very proud of 2-3 things: unity in diversity, our democracy, and freedom of every type to all its citizens. However, what I'd like to say is that despite 77 years of freedom, we have not yet become cohesive enough to face the onslaughts. Now, there must be something wrong which we are not addressing properly. So while it will be very simplistic to answer this question of political cohesiveness and societal cohesiveness, and we can simply say that let's go for electoral reforms, let's go for administrative reforms, let's go for the youth engagement and all those particular things. But I think there is a need to look into the neighborhood specifically and the world at large. China is following a China dream, but with what strength? Its strength is Hanization of entire China. So whether they have done what they have done to the Muslims in Uyghur, what they are doing to the Tibetans in Tibet, and all those things carry forward the strength. Similarly, when we come to Pakistan, they have been able to keep their country together as the discourse has gone, that Islam has been a uniting factor. But in India, there is something missing that we have not been able to put together. So, if I may say that while these reforms and things are quite okay to be followed, and the government is doing more than required, but look at a new strain coming up. We already have agreed that we are facing 2.5 front. Is there a new challenge emerging? Pakistan from 1947 to 71 did everything conventional, and even later in Kargil, to rake up the Kashmir issue or take some portions of it. After that, it changed tack. It came to proxy war from 1988-89 onwards, and which continues till today. So there have been major attacks. There have been attacks on minorities. Pandits have gone out. Chitti Singhpura, Sikhs were targeted, and there have been targeted killings. But I feel that there is also a need to look at the latest thing which has happened. Whether it has happened coincidentally, I doubt. It is possibility that there is a connection. On one side, the chief of Pakistan Army makes a statement on two-nation theory, and he underlines the factor of Muslim. On the other side, Pahalgam has happened, wherein for the first time, so much of inquiry has been done before targeting these 26 people. So is the agenda larger? Because we see certain vociferous tendencies in India. There are certain states which are already trying to, if I may use that word, overprotect the interests of the minorities. There are some administrative reforms which are underway and are being challenged. So is Pakistan increasing the canvas? We ought to be very mindful of that. And all the administrative reforms, etc., what we put into place have to keep this factor in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, I just like to add 2 points here. One is, this identity-based politics in our country, and that should be discouraged. I think that's extremely inimical to our national interests. And second is the health of our institutions. I mean, if our institutions are strong, robust, healthy, vibrant, and they're guided by the Constitution of India, rather than a political expediency, I think we will be able to wither or face any kind of threats or shocks. So that takes me to the next question. And that again, while this whole mahal of, kind of tension is afoot, people are still talking about, normalization of relations. Nobody in India really is itching for war. But yes, there is definitely a sentiment for taking retribution against Pakistan so that it doesn't, get away with its unruly behavior. From that perspective, what are those bottom lines for normalization of relations with Pakistan? Ambassador Pasaria?
General Sharma, can I please make a couple of
I'll get
comments?
you towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
So I would say that much of the national mood for Pakistan has changed. Even in this century, if you look at the various acts of terrorism, I think we are now at a situation where we have a zero tolerance to terrorism, because that is a complete deal breaker from the India point of view. And therefore, 2016-19, India found it necessary to change the paradigm and get into hot pursuit of terrorists. And I feel it won't be any different now. But, on the larger debate of the identity, the issues of identity, I would say what India is demonstrating is the democratic negotiation, which is absent completely in Pakistan. We are comfortable as Indians in our civilizational identity and our constitutional identity. There may be some trade-off and frictions between cultural nationalism and constitutional secularism, but we are by and large comfortable with both and dealing with both. And I think one index was that despite Pakistan's very obvious attempt, even in this latest Pahalgam episode, to create communal riots in India and to create an anti-Kashmir or Kashmir versus rest of India feeling, that has been overcome. India is strong enough not to fall into that trap. But I would agree with the general sense that there is a sense to that it is important for India to under that principle of zero tolerance to terrorism and zero tolerance to cross-border terror, to come together as a nation to deal with this issue and allow the government to deal with it both in its external and internal dimensions in whichever way it sees fit.
Thank you. And Jan Huda, your thoughts on this?
Look, yes, Sharma, it's very, very clear. The bottom line for normalization is that Pakistan should not use terrorism as an instrument of state policy. I mean, that's absolutely the clear sort of bottom line. India has never said that we are not willing to discuss bilateral issues with Pakistan. That offer has been made. We only say that we don't want any third-party interference. Can Pakistan eschew its role of using terrorism as state policy? I've already mentioned. I mean, this whole military jihad complex is so interlinked and intertwined that breaking it down, even for Pakistan, poses internal sort of radical challenges. What is heartening, and I just want to say this and take what Ambassador Basaria said a little forward. What has been heartening in the response to Pahalgam is the fact that the political parties seem to have come together. I know there has been some dissonant voices, but largely I think we've come together to say that look, we are fully supportive of the government, and if we can take this opportunity, Jan Sharma, to sort of craft a more comprehensive long-term plan on how to deal with Pakistan, that really would be very, very helpful. The other bright spark I see is the way people of Jammu and Kashmir have come together to condemn terrorism. This is something that we had not seen in the past. Both of us have spent long periods in Jammu and Kashmir, and particularly in Kashmir, we hadn't seen such a thing happening. The fact that the Legislative Assembly has had a special sitting in which they've all sort of condemned terrorism and said, look, the people are on the path to rejecting this. This actually would tremendously help because, as Pakistan keeps this narrative that Kashmir is troubled and internal problems are there, I would only sort of suggest caution in how we react internally to this Pahalgam incident. We've seen scenes of houses being blown up, of relatives, etc., etc. To me, this is good short-term optics, but I think in the long term, it can be counterproductive. So the sentiment that has been shown, can we sort of reinforce that? And that will require some really nuanced actions as we deal with the internal security situation in Jammu and Kashmir.
Thank you
Jan Sharma,
for that very sagacious, I think, suggestion. And yes, now we'll just conclude this conversation and request for the panelists for their parting thought. Over to you, Arvind.
Thank you, General Sharma. I would agree with the remarks made by Ambassador Basaria, General Huda, and you. So just to add a little bit to it, so India's strength basically comes from its diversity. But to stay united and secure, we need some clear steps. So we need to basically treat all communities fairly, take strong action against hate speeches, fake news, and violence, and promote a shared Indian identity. I have witnessed some glimpses of the Kashmiri community being actually promoted in the national media. So more work needs to be done in order to promote Kashmiriyat. I think that would be a good response to the Pakistanis. We need to basically, our government needs to have some sort of regular security briefings. They need to give to the major political parties, set up some cross-party committees like the United States House Committee on Foreign Affairs, and avoid using security issues for the political point scoring. I would also say that in India, often the army is used for the political gains. So we need to basically keep the armed forces out of the politics. We need to keep the institutions independent, like you said, General Sharma. It's really, really important. And finally, I would also say that we need to focus on jobs and education development, and especially in the areas that actually feel left behind, like the Northeast and J&K. So in short, unity and security go hand in hand. They need cooperation across parties, fair policies, and trust in the institutions. It's a shared national responsibility, and we all need to play a part in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan Yadav, your concluding remarks.
I feel that the most important thing, which has been the need for quite some time, is to get the nation together. And I feel that the new education policy which has come in, the youth engagement is an essential element, because the generation coming in ought to understand the importance of keeping the nation together. However, along with that, I think we need to tighten up the screws on the political aspects, where the people think similarly, and the legal enforcement, because that is important, so that any decision which is taken to fructification. Thank you.
2 points. One, a point was made that Islam keeps Pakistan together. I think more than Islam is the Pakistan army, because the Islam has been a divisive force in Pakistan, but it's the army that keeps Pakistan together. And secondly, about normalization. See, I find it very difficult to accept that there can be normalization. Reason being what? Pakistan's nationalism is religious, and India's nationalism is territorial. We have a certain territory. We don't covet anybody else's territory, but we don't want to give up our territory. Pakistan feels that just because Jammu and Kashmir is a Muslim majority area, it should come to Pakistan on the basis of religion. So there is no meeting ground. You can talk till the cows come home, but there is no meeting ground so long as Pakistan does not change its mindset and its DNA, which looks upon religious nationalism as the fundamental principles of its existence.
Thank you. Ajahn Huda.
Thanks, General Sharma. It's been a very interesting discussion. I just want to make one brief point, which is, look, we've been dealing with the problem of Pakistan for now, since independence, really. Sometimes I feel that, we are lurching from one crisis to another, engaged in crisis management, being a little reactive. As I said, I think there is a need for long-term thinking on this issue. Today, there is so much disparity between India and Pakistan. We have enough tools, in our comprehensive national power. Diplomatic heft is growing, economy is growing, military is capable. Can we craft a consistent policy, long-term policy towards Pakistan? Nothing's going to change, overnight, but perhaps some consistent kind of pressure. And I would say incentivization. When we talk about deterrence is not merely about coercion, it's also about incentivizing that you'll be better off if you don't do this, and this is how you can be better off. And it's at the same time, again, a long-term policy for Jammu and Kashmir, again, not for conflict management, for conflict resolution. Can it be done? I firmly believe it can be done. Again, we just need to look at whether we should continue to rely on a securitized approach, or is a much wider approach, which is more people-centric, will do the trick. If the Kashmir issue moves towards normalization, I think much of Pakistan's narrative of jugular vein, etc., will get punctured. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Tisari.
Yes, so I would, just summarize by repeating some of the points General Huda made. I would say on Kashmir, we should encourage continuing this process of normalization and democratic healing that is going on in Kashmir, notwithstanding the Pahalgam incident. So it is a process that is going on. There was an attempt to rupture it, but we should keep the faith and continue going in that direction. And it's a positive direction to go in. On Pakistan, the absolute minimum condition, it should be clear to Pakistan, is that India now has zero tolerance to terrorism. The reaction to Pahalgam should be of reimposing deterrence by a suite of measures, which includes kinetic measures, the economic coercion, as well as the diplomatic moves. And that would then take us after that to a position where we could, if not certainly not to normalize relations, but agree on some tactical way of coexisting.
Thank you. In conclusion, I just want to say, M.J. Akbar in his book had called Pakistan a toxic jelly. And I think that's such a true description of this country, which is at war with its own self and also an irritant towards India. In regard to its behavior towards India, it is high time that we have a very cohesive and a sustainable approach in dealing with Pakistan, which should be credible and which should be not taken so lightly by Pakistan, because after we put some pressure, then again there is a period of lull and we don't know what to do. So we need a long-term strategy. And at the same time, we should not get unduly distracted by this nuisance that is Pakistan. Our whole focus should be development, credible deterrence, a very nimble-footed diplomacy to navigate our interests in a very uncertain world. And last, which is still, I feel, a gray area in Indian context, is our strategic communication. Because there is nobody in control about Indian narrative. And it is high time that some institutionalized efforts are made to have a very well-stitched, plausible, and a very vibrant national narrative. On that note, we hope that tensions ease out, and we look forward to another discussion of this nature with you. Thanks for your time, and thank you for your wisdom. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.